Australian, your resident road safety expert from Mobility Engineering, back again for another Q&A. Thank you very much for sending in those questions. We love them. Keep them rolling in. We'll keep making those videos. And as I always say, can you please hit our trusty subscribe button down there that looks like my trusty subscribe pillow, and help us get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. We'd really love your support to do that, so don't be afraid, hit that button and let's get cracking on the video. So today's video is relatively simple. It comes from one of our install partners in Melbourne. Basically what they've asked was around seat weight capacities. So what they've said is wheelchairs, like this one here, they come with a designated weight rating on the user occupant, and as well as the seat belts, as well as the tie down points. All of them have specific weight ratings and user occupant ratings, and that's very good and that's very nicely defined. However, does the same thing exist when we move into our car seat? And in our car, is there weight limits on that? Because there's sometimes people can be quite large, or they have questions around sort of, I guess, what is the limits around what we can do around those seatbelts. Now, unfortunately, there is the way that the system of certification works for cars and wheelchairs is two completely different systems in Australia. So because they're two completely different systems in Australia, they kind of don't talk to each other and they're not relevant. And so what that means is that the testing and the requirements for one thing is completely different to what's in the other thing, right? Because they don't talk to each other, they're not part of the same thing, even though they are traveling within, cars. It's just how the system works in Australia. So the system for wheelchair occupant restraints is very defined in terms of ratings and capacities, but for vehicles, it's done differently. So what they do is they don't define a weight, they basically create the vehicle for the greater society, and then what they do is they do a series of crash tests with crash test dummies that range across a bunch of average weights, right? So they use P1, P2, they've got a whole bunch of dummies that they've got, and they crash the cars into the walls with different dummies, and basically they just verify that the vehicle is safe to use for the greater community. However, one little warning on that is that the dummies are generally much lighter than the society. So in our research, the average crash test dummy for an average adult that they put in there is actually 68 kilograms. So they're effectively saying that if the car can handle a 68 kilogram human, it basically can cater for the rest of society. Now, looking around, including myself, there is not a lot of people, adults in Australia, that are less than 68 kilos. Most would be above. And the vehicle manufacturers do test above that 68 kilos. However, they're not required to. So some cars might do it better than others. So you just have to be very careful with if that's a very important thing to you. But I guess, not to give you too much information around that and cause you confusion or scare you, because there is no real problem with vehicle safety. They're all crash tested. They're all crash tested with extra weights on occasion as well to make sure they're safe. So it's not to scare you about that. It's just to explain that there is a defined difference. There is no weight limits on car seats. They're just defined for general purpose of society. And wheelchairs, there are weight limits, and I guess it's probably because they're defined for individuals and prescribed for individuals, so it's easier for them to put constraints and limits on that. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thanks for bringing in those questions. Keep them coming, and hit that subscribe button down there, and we'll see you next time.